Now, most people are aware or have some kind of idea that the current systems in place, the social systems, the political systems, and certainly at the moment the economic systems, are problematic, or they're not, we could say, they're not exactly for the benefit of the common man or the common law man. And they seem to perpetuate things like excessive taxation, incredible amounts of debt with interest charged on that debt, restrictions of opinion if anyone questions the system or questions the official versions of things. People are strongly encouraged to keep within the system. And more of these problems with the financial, social, political systems are being highlighted by alternative speakers or alternative investigators who are really questioning the system. And recently there's been a lot of talk about this free man thing. I'd like to call it the free man movement. I don't think it quite deserves to be called a movement at the moment. But it's something that's certainly deserving of our attention. Not only to highlight the problems in those areas, which there's plenty of people doing, but actually to come up with solutions. I think that's the crucial thing. And the person I'm going to be speaking to today is someone who has solutions, who's someone who's got a plan, to not only eliminate the problems with the system and highlight them, eliminate them, but to actually have a viable solution. So it's worthy of further investigation. Now, the person I'm going to be speaking to today is controversial not only because he's questioning the current system, but also because he's also a convert to a particular religion. And if I've said controversial, you can probably guess which one that is already. I would stress at this point that here at the Broader View, we don't subscribe to any religion. In fact, we take a particularly dim view of organised religion. But we're willing to listen to different opinions, and certainly willing to listen to people that have solutions to humanity's problems. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. ABDUN NUR. Hi ABDUN, thanks for joining us today. So first of all, you're a white guy from Yorkshire who's converted to Islam, yeah? You're playing with fire there. You're talking about this stuff as well, yeah? Are you not worried about getting sort of...
Well, I'm not a religious Muslim. So, religion is not part of Islam, it's a deen. The ones that are religious aren't really Muslims.
So basically, what you're saying is, I mean, let's just look at this first of all, just to see where we're at. This is a paper from the other day. I would never normally buy this paper, but I was on it. Happened to be on a train the other day, and I picked up this paper. This is a Daily Mail, literally from the other day. And the articles, I've seen these articles before. I'm sure you have too. I've literally seen these articles. Let's just have a quick look at this. First article there: stoned to death. How can a nation that could soon be a nuclear power still legally stone women to death for adultery? So in other words, Islam's an evil religion, and of course Iran is a terribly evil place that we need to destroy. You've got a liquid bomb plot, and the trio are going to face, this trio of obviously Muslim men are going to face life in jail. It's high on emotion, of course, there's no science behind it. We still don't know, no one's told us how you make a bomb that will blow an aeroplane up out of Evian water. So, you know, that's still a complete mystery, but nonetheless, you know, Muslims are really terrible people and they should be thrown in jail. And then, of course, this guy, which has been in the Daily Mail probably more than just about anybody else over the last few years, even though it's years and years since he was in this country. And this is the interesting thing, I'm sure you agree with me, human rights law may spare Hamza from US justice. In other words, please take our human rights away. The last thing we want, people, is any human rights. Is that right? We want our human rights totally destroyed. So that's Muslims. So you tell us about let's get this out of the way first of all, because you know we're happy to talk to you, but a lot of people are going to be put off the fact that you know that you're into that sort of thing. Now, can you just explain the situation, why you're involved with that, or why you think that's a good thing? Because we've been presented with the wrong picture then, aren't we? Because Islam's been demonised, isn't it?
Yes, well, it's an enemy for a very good reason. The reason is that the four models that I'm going to present are really the message of the Quran. So they've had these systems in place in the past, and they don't want them to come back, the establishment. So the best enemy is the one that has the answers. So you vilify the place where you find the answers to your problems. Therefore you won't go up there. so you'll never escape the control of the sovereigns. It's a simple concept. So the religion that they've created, which is based on Wahhabism, is not Islam. Hadith is not Islam. It's just the systems, and that's what the deen is. It means the systems to live in this world. That's what the deen of of the Quran is. So
what you're saying is then all these things about stoning people to death or wearing funny hats.
It's not in the Quran. That's a Christian, a biblical Christian act. That's what they used to do. They've implanted lots of religious dogma from various religions into Hadith, and then they've applied it to Sharia law. Sharia means the path to the watercourse, so the path to quench your thirst for justice. So they want to corrupt and pervert Islam as much as they can, and that's why the British Secret Service created Wahhabism in the first place and implanted the royal family in Saudi Arabia, which are Jewish.
So the royal family in Saudi Arabia are Jewish?
Yeah, originally.
And I mean, aren't most of the mosques?
90% of the mosques are funded by the Saudi Arabians. So through that, they can then implant their various books that propagate their various belief structure, or what they want to propagate. Probably don't believe it themselves, but they want people to believe their nonsense, and then Islam's lost. You get a version of a religion which Islam isn't a religion, it's a deen. It never was a religion. In fact, it condemns all religions as worthless. Across the board, they're a crime against humanity. All religions are. So I'm not a religious man.
So you're not a religious man?
I don't pray, as it's not in the Quran. They say Salat means prayer. Salat means to closely follow, like a horse, second-place horse to a leader, the guidance of the Quran. The guidance of the Quran is just as four systems, basically.
Right, okay, well, we'll get into that in a minute. Basically what we're saying is that Islam, like the other religions, has been totally corrupted then.
Yeah.
It isn't what we're hearing about in the newspapers. That's just sort of like tribal or cultural.
Well, a lot of the things that they blame Muslims for, they've done themselves. They do a lot of false flag, as you know.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Okay, so I mean, it's interesting though. If you were a different religion, you were saying this stuff, you'd be treated very differently, sort of thing.
If I believed in, for example, in Christianity, the models are in the Bible, so I wouldn't find them there.
Right. Okay. So what we're saying is the models are in this book, which they've then sought to vilify. But let's go back, because we were talking, say, the Native Americans, for example, who were, there was genocide against them from the.
They estimate they killed 100 million Americans. The Native Americans.
So they killed maybe 100 million, say. They also followed this system.
This system naturally occurs. If people are left to their own devices, these four models will, not always all four, but variants of the four models will always appear. But the most, before the founding fathers, which were all Roman Catholic lawyers, before they enslaved the population of America with the Constitution, it was a law deal in America, the land. They brought it into a sovereign system, and then all Americans go, founding fathers are fabulous. They're nonsense. It's nonsense. These are criminals.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, we understand that now. Yeah, we understand that now.
But the Americans, they focus completely on this Constitution, which was written against them. They should just apply common law.
So we've got the Native Americans. We've got what was originally in the Quran, and you're saying basically any natural system.
Well, before 1066 in England, we had all four models.
Well, we'll go into that as well. But any natural system, then we would fit into this model. So it's nothing to do with religion, then.
No.
No, nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. Okay.
Other than the fact that it's in the Quran, you could ignore it as being in the Quran and just use the models on their own merit.
Yeah, because they have been used by others in the past, and it makes sense. These models work for a society over to perpetuate itself.
For millennia, they'll work without problems. You have no inflation. You have no exploitation of any sort. People get a free environment.
Okay. Well, we'll go into that later. First of all, though, let's just look at the the free man movement, the common freedom movement. Now, this is something which has been on the alternative scene in this country for the last couple of years. A bit of a buzz talking about it. even if it's only like things you don't have to pay your parking tickets, and they can't arrest you and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, and we've spoken to a couple of people on that as well. Now let's just get some definitions, just so we know what we're talking about first of all with that, because I know a lot of people, they're not really sure that the definition. So if we can just, you've talked about allodial first of all. What does that actually mean?
Well, allodial is a concept, a legal concept. It actually exists, even today. They don't allow it to exist, but the concept still exists. And that's underpins. If you get, the book on the Oxford book on English law, the latest edition, still the underpinning system is allodial. They've put a fiction upon it. So land, I can give you an analogy.
Yeah.
The land, first of all, who owned the land to start with, to get the right to buy and sell it? Where does that right originate? Now, according to their view, the establishment view, it's from Adam and Eve. But if you look in the Bible, they were never given ownership of the earth, ever. Just as they were given to look after it, but not to own it. So you can't buy and sell something you don't own. So that's the first problem with their system. The second problem is that in Britain anyway, probably in most countries, the land was taken by force. So in 1066, William the Bastard, as it was known, came from being blackmailed by the Pope to do so. He came to England because the Pope at the time threatened to make his marriage incestuous, and that would have been a nasty thing in them days. So if he didn't do what he wanted him to invade England and subjugate the population. Because these four models existed, it's a problem for the elite. If you have a system like this, it removes them, and it removes all the easy money that they've been stealing off the population for as long as they can keep their systems running. So the last thing they want is these systems. So they have to, if they've got an example of these systems like existed in England, that would be a problem for the rest of Europe. Because if the rest of Europe saw that, they might think we want them systems as well and get rid of the sovereigns, these parasites. So they're not going to allow that to happen.
Okay, so just let's get some definitions though. So common law.
Well, common law, what's lawful is not the same as what's legal. What's legal is legislation. What's lawful is common law, and common law is just two laws. The first law is I have it exactly written down.
Yeah.
Do all you have agreed to do, and that's the basis of contract law. And the second law is do not encroach on other persons or their property, and that's the basis of civil and criminal law. And you can, using just those two simple concepts, you can apply all law. You don't need anything else. You don't need any legislation at all. For example, if I wanted to drive on roads without a legislative system, then I just contract to do it. So instead of the state imposing something upon me, I impose it upon myself. And that's the right way around. You can't do it the other way around. You can't have something imposed upon you. Nothing should be imposed upon you. That removes your freedom. You must impose it on yourself as a free choice. You want to drive up roads, then you've got to sign a contract so that you won't drive drunk or speed or whatever the community your roads are in decide is the contract. So then it's a fair contract. What they do is they force things upon you, and then they'll extract money from that through fining you for not following their legislation, which they impose upon you. So you have no choice. So, for example, they can say you've got to wear a seatbelt, and if you don't, we're going to steal money off you. So you might not want to wear a seatbelt, but it affects nobody else. So why would it matter? It makes no difference other than the fact they can steal off you.
So common law is just these two laws. It's different. Legislation is
legislation is what you sign. Under common law, you must be bound to a contract of a society. So you must have a contract that you sign. Now, your birth certificate was signed by your parents on your behalf, which contracts you to this society. That's why when you go to court, it's really your birth certificate that goes to court, because that's what it's contract to do. So you've got the fiction of a corporation upon yourself.
So really, let's just the current system. Let's look at the current system then. We're saying it's the current system that's wrong then. It's like a corporation.
Yeah, corporations are illegal.
Yeah, but let's just go into that. So most people though, if they're coming new to this, I mean hopefully most people are aware of some of these concepts, but they probably think that society's fine at the moment.
Well, then we'll wait and see when it does finish its collapse. It's halfway through its collapse. It'll completely collapse, and then they can, as long as they've understood these seeds, then they can start applying these.
Well, I mean, it's often said though that the best slave thinks he's free.
Well, I'm sure lots of
That
people
thinks
do.
it's free. They believe they're free, say, compared to Soviet Russia or China and this kind of thing. But a lot of people, like yourself, are saying that it's slowly becoming George Orwell's 1984.
Well, not that slowly, but it is becoming, yeah.
Well, it is becoming. I mean, you think it was 1984, it's slower than that. It's gradually sort of happening, yeah? And there's a thing on your front. We're talking about freedom, yeah? Okay, so we'll go to that. Freedom, you've got on your site this quote, freedom is making decisions under your own volition, not having to comply with the decisions of others. You've sort of talked about this. So, we don't want to be bound by all these unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. We want to make our own decisions.
Have you ever considered democracy? It's like, if you have a room full of people and they all decide they're going to be democratic. So, say John and Joe decide that Anne is really, really fit and they fancy a bit with Anne, right?
Yeah.
So they look from the, and using a sophist argument, they decide that it's a good idea if anybody at will can rape Anne. Right, and they all say, that's a good idea, all blokes. Oh, she's very fit, is Anne. We'll all rape Anne. So Anne gets raped by anybody who wants to rape her. That's democracy. Not Anne can do about it because she agreed. Right? So democracy, it's a flawed system. Now, we don't even have that. We have where we vote for somebody who's going to decide for us, which is representative democracy. So we vote for Joe, and he decides, he gets up there and he says, right, now you vote for me, I'm going to rape anybody I want because I'm in charge. Now we don't have that in this country. We vote for people who then vote for someone else.
In Europe,
so it's even more.
Yeah.
Well, here as well, we don't vote for the Prime Minister. We vote for people who vote for the Prime Minister. So it's even more removed. So what you're doing is you're inflicting the dictates of somebody else upon the population. You can't have that system. It's a crime against yourself. It's a crime against common sense.
Well, let's. You've got freedom of taking responsibility for actions, not creating excuses to justify them, as the corporations and stuff. Can you define sort of freedom for us then? Because you're saying it's the wrong way around.
It is the wrong way around. You've got a sophist. A sophist is one who's skilled in elaborate and devious argumentation. Right? That's like a barrister, a politician, people in the media. That's their thing. They argue things with an agenda, so that they can shape people's views of things using a sophist argument. So, what they're trying to argue that freedom from a perspective of a person's actions, so that your actions dictate your freedom, which isn't the case. So they say that to be free, you'd be able to do anything you wanted. You could go around and do anything you want. You'd be free, right? That's not freedom, because personal freedom is responsibility, whereas freedom, true freedom, should be viewed in the opposite perspective. A society free from exploitation, free from subjugation, free from conflict, free from usury, free from taxation, free from religious compulsion, free from anything that's going to enslave you, right? And it's the environment that would allow you to be free, not your personal choices. That's what they try and trick you into thinking. So then they'll bring out laws to give you your personal choices legislation, and they'll call that human rights. But the real freedom is the environment you're within. And they won't ever want you to understand that, being that way around. They try and turn everything the other way. So everything's confusing. People can't understand what freedom is then.
So freedom is living in a society where you have to make your own
Yeah, well,
laws
you're
up.
responsible for your actions. That's freedom.
Yeah, you have to make your own laws up rather than relying on someone else to do it.
Well, you don't have to make anything up. You only have to follow the two laws of common law and apply those two laws, and everything works. You don't need legislation. What happens is, when you contract under common law, you must be contracted to society. That the society can create legislation.
Well, could you be outside society though? Completely?
No, not under common law. You must be contracted. That's why they've got you. You see, because at the moment you are contracted to this society, so they've got you. So under their legislation, you have to follow their legislation because you have contracted to that society. Your parents did it for you. Now you can get out of that contract with an affidavit. If you send an affidavit to the
Well, so what we're saying is then that this society we're in at the moment, then it's the same as under contract law, but we've contracted into it.
Yeah, well, your parents did for you on your behalf.
Because of the birth certificate. So when the parents gave my birth certificate, or signed it and gave my birth certificate, they were contracting me into this society, yeah?
That's it.
Okay. So if I want to get out of this society, I mean, if we agree that this society is, it's got a lot of problems, and there could be better, what we're trying to do here is trying to find out about better models of society, there could be a better way of doing it, I can get out of it. That's basically what you're saying, isn't it?
As long as you didn't sign into it yourself. If you sign into it yourself, it might be a bit tricky to get out. But because your parents did, you never signed, you can send an affidavit, you can remove yourself from the society. You've got to send 2 affidavits, you give them 40 days notice, and then to reply. And then once you're outside, you've got to contract then to another societal model. So you'd have to. I mean, the free men on the land have created a society to do that as well, to sign to. So there is certain things that if I was doing a contract, I would bring in, which is that you could have no sovereign, you could have no usury. There's various things that I'd in a contract I'd stipulate as a societal model, which would keep you free. Because what people tend to do is, through ignorance, they allow sophists to come in and trick them into following all sorts of silly systems, like we have now.